Yeah, 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 yeah. 39 weeks, trying to bring a little life into the world. Praying every night for my baby girl. Yeah, yeah. Didn't know how I make it, didn't know what was next, but your how it kept me moving when I had nothing left. And my family beside me, and my faith holding strong. And every step of the journey was preparing me all along. Now I understand why I had to walk through it. Now I understand why I couldn't quit. Everything changed the moment that you got here. And every tear, every prayer, baby girl, you were worth it. When I held you in my arms, everything made sense. Yeah, how I made a way when it looked impossible. And baby girl, you're living proof that his promises are true. Yeah. Birds in the water, midwife by my side, my mama in the room, my sister by my side. Every contraction coming like a wave across the shore. I kept saying to myself, I can do a little more. Then I heard that little cry and my whole world changed. All the pain disappeared, nothing felt the same. Everything changed the moment that you got here. And every tear, every prayer, baby girl, you were worth it. When I held you in my arms, everything made sense. Yeah, how I made a way when it looked impossible. And baby girl, you're living proof that his promises are true. When people let me down, you never left my side. When doors kept closing, you still open mine. I can see it clearly now. Every step was in your plan, and the blessing I was carrying was already in your hand. Everything changed the moment that you got here. And every tear, every prayer, baby girl, you were worth it. Now I look into your eyes and all I see is grace. A living testimony of your Howard's faith. How for every lesson, for every trial, for my daughter.
By October of 2024, I was exhausted. Not just physically exhausted from being heavily pregnant. I was emotionally, mentally, and spiritually exhausted. For months, I had been trying to keep myself stable while preparing for the arrival of my daughter. I was trying to reduce stress, stay healthy, and hold on to hope that somehow her father and I would figure things out before she arrived. Because I was planning a natural birth at a freestanding birth center, I was doing everything I could to keep her in as long as possible, so I had to basically put myself on bed rest when I started getting Braxton Hicks contractions at 36 weeks. I wasn't driving unless it was absolutely necessary, and I wasn't really going too many places. I wanted to make sure that when labor started, I would be close to home and close to my birth team. I hadn't seen Deacon since August, and on the evening of October 8th, he finally arrived in California. The next day, he came with me to my 39-week appointment, and he toured the birth center. The midwives talked to both of us about natural ways to encourage labor. They explained that my body needed oxytocin, comfort, relaxation, affection, and support. They talked about things like cuddling, massages, physical closeness, and creating an environment where I felt safe enough for my body to just relax. In other words, they explained exactly how he can help. But he didn't want to do any of it. That first night, I tried. I sat close to him. I asked him to rub my back, and I asked him to help me relax. For maybe 5 minutes, he rubbed the top of my back before he started complaining about being hot and saying that he had already rubbed me. I remember thinking, I'm almost 40 weeks pregnant. We're trying to bring our daughter into the world. 5 minutes is enough. Eventually, I gave up and laid down next to my mom instead. My mom was the one who rubbed my back that night. The next morning at 10:30, I had an appointment about 30 minutes away with my doula, who was also an acupuncturist and doctor of Chinese medicine. She was doing a labor encouragement session. I asked him to take me, but he said it was too early in the morning. My mom was at work, so even though I hadn't been comfortable driving alone, I drove myself, 39 weeks pregnant. Afterwards, my doula told me to go home, drink tea, listen to calming music, rest, and focus on relaxing. So when I got home, I did exactly that. I ate a little, laid down, and took a nap. And when I woke up, he came in the room and told me that he wanted to sleep and he didn't want to hear the music that I was listening to. So I turned it off. Then I asked him again if he could cuddle with me and rub my back. Immediately, it became an argument. He insisted that he had already done it. I reminded him that it was only for a few minutes the night before, and then we were suddenly arguing over whether helping me for 5 minutes counted as helping at all. Once again, instead of feeling cared for, I felt like I was inconveniencing him. So I got up and I went into the living room. Later that day, my sister came over, and that's when things started changing. My mucus plug began coming out. I started having more noticeable contractions. My back hurt, my stomach was cramping, and for the first time, I felt excited. Maybe my daughter was finally getting ready to come. The next day, things continued progressing, nothing unbearable, but enough that I knew that my body was working. My mom and I ran a few errands. I went on a walk. My sister came over and gave me one of the best back massages I've ever had. Meanwhile, he was in another room recording music. That night, I took an herbal sitz bath and I tried to rest. Then he told me that he wanted to go out. He said he was tired of being stuck in the house, that he felt like he was in jail. I was actively in labor. I was carrying his child. He had only been there for a few days and he wanted to take my car and go out drinking. The same car that already had the car seat installed, the one that was packed and ready for me to drive to the birth center at any moment's notice. I told him he should take an Uber, rent a car, have somebody pick him up, anything. Why risk something happening in this car? Instead, he told me I was worrying about stupid things, and he left anyways and he went to go get some food and go out for drinks. Later that night, things got worse. I had finally gotten comfortable in my bed. The air conditioner was on, the fan was running, I had my pregnancy pillow and blankets exactly the way I wanted them. Then he came into the room around 1:30 in the morning, turned everything off, climbed into the bed, and got upset when I asked him to leave the air on. What started as a conversation about the air conditioner somehow turned into him telling me he was leaving if the baby didn't come by Tuesday. He said he didn't give a F about a baby being born. He said he only came because I wanted him there. He said his other wives were upset because he wasn't there when his other child was born. He said I wasn't really in labor and that he shouldn't have come yet. I sat there in complete disbelief. This wasn't some random trip. This was the birth of our daughter, my first child. Eventually, I got up and left the room because I couldn't take anymore. I heated up some pizza that he had brought back and sat on the couch in the living room watching an episode of Impractical Jokers. After about a half an hour, I got up and went back into the room and I got into the bed. A few hours later, around 6 in the morning, I woke up to the bed shaking. I turned over and he was on all fours, groaning in pain with his face buried in the pillow. I asked him what was wrong and he said that his stomach was hurting. Within minutes, he was in the bathroom projectile vomiting and having explosive diarrhea. And somehow there I was, 40 weeks pregnant, actively in labor, sitting on the bathroom floor with the cold wash rag, rubbing his back. I remember thinking to myself, how am I supposed to have a baby right now? After a couple hours in the bathroom, I heard my mom getting up and ready in her room. She had planned to take me for a pedicure that morning, and I went to see her and she asked how I was feeling. I told her I was still having mild cramping, but that he was in the bathroom and he was sick. She asked what happened and I told her that I wasn't really sure, that he had went out for pizza and drinks and he came back around 1:30 in the morning. I told her what he had said to me, how I left the room and ate the same pizza he ate before I went to lay down, and then he woke up sick. She immediately said the Most High got him. Honestly, all I could do was agree. For the rest of the weekend, he was sick. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, barely able to get out of the bed sick. And on Monday, once he started to feel a little bit better, of course, the first thing he wanted to do was go out and get a drink. At that point, I was just like, go do whatever you want to do. Meanwhile, I couldn't get comfortable. I couldn't settle into labor. I couldn't relax the way I needed to. He still needed me to do everything for him, get him smoothies, find the medicine he wanted, and take care of him while he laid in my bed for 3 days. The longer he stayed there, the more I started questioning whether I even wanted him present when I gave birth. Not because I wanted to keep him away, but because he wasn't helping at all. By Tuesday, he decided he was going back to Washington. He said he would come back in 10 days after our daughter was born. And honestly, part of me felt relieved. At the very least, I appreciated that he made the effort to come, but the reality of having him there had been very different than what I had imagined. I needed peace, I needed calm, and I needed my own space. Most of all, I needed to have this baby. I called my grandma and I asked her to ride along to drop him off at the airport that afternoon. I couldn't have been more excited for him to be getting out of my car. I literally pulled off so quick. I had went straight to get a pedicure. I was so happy to finally have my bed back that I pretty much slept the rest of the day. The next day, the contractions were stronger, and I spent most of the day laying around trying to just sleep through them. But the very next morning, around 7:30, I woke up with contractions that were impossible to ignore. And this time, they weren't stopping. I called my mom, I called my sister, I texted my doula, and everyone started mobilizing. At first, they were 10 to 15 minutes apart. My mom had just left for work, so she turned around and came back to the house. My sister got there first, and at that point, I had got back in the bed to try to go back to sleep, but she told me that I needed to get up because we wanted these to keep progressing. We didn't want these ones to stop. About 3 hours later, we were at 6 minutes apart. Then suddenly everything changed. My mom had went right around the corner to get us all something to eat, and I had needed to use the restroom again, so I got up just shortly after she left. Within minutes, the contractions were less than 3 minutes apart. I was in so much pain, I couldn't even concentrate on calling my doula. I had to have my sister call her. Once the doula heard me over the phone, she immediately said, "It's time. You need to start making your way to the birth center." My mom was so surprised when we called her to tell her what the doula just said. She hadn't even been gone for 10 minutes. I put my head wrap on, said my prayers, texted Deacon that we were heading to the birth center, and I got in the car. That drive was miserable. Every bump felt like a speed bump. Every contraction felt like my body was literally splitting apart. When we got to the birth center, my doula and my midwife were ready. From that moment forward, I was surrounded by support, real support, the kind I had been needing for months. My doula massaged me, applied pressure points, rubbed my shoulders, helped me breathe, and encouraged me through every stage of labor. My mom was there, my sister was there, my niece was there, my dad even showed up later. My birth team was there. And for the very first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. After laboring in the birthing tub, praying, breathing, and reminding myself over and over that I could do this, the Lord brought me this far and He was going to see me through. Everything finally came together. At 3:35 p.m. on October 17th, 2024, my daughter was born. The moment my midwife lifted her out of the water and placed her on my chest, I just broke down crying. I was saying, "We did it, we did it." And as I sat there crying, I just kept thinking, the Wada Yahweh. I can't fully explain what that moment felt like. The relief, the joy, the gratitude, the overwhelming love. For months, I'd been fighting to hold everything together, and suddenly she was here. Healthy, beautiful, perfect. And as I sat there holding her, nothing else mattered. Not the arguments, not the counselings, not the money, not the manipulation, none of it. For the first time in a very long time, everything became quiet. It was just me and her, the little girl I had spent 9 months protecting, the little girl whose father I had fought so hard to keep in her life, the little girl who had already changed me forever. Over the next few days, I settled into motherhood. The sleepless nights, the nursing, the constant staring at her face and trying to memorize every detail. I was exhausted, but I was happy. And despite everything, I still believed her father would come back. Before he left California, he told me he would return 10 days later. He said he wanted to be involved. He said he wanted to be a part of her life. So I waited. What I didn't know then was that the next few months would force me to finally accept something I had spent over a year trying not to see. Because the birth of my daughter changed everything. When she was born, I wasn't expecting perfection. I wasn't expecting all of our problems to magically disappear overnight. I wasn't expecting us to suddenly become some happy family, but I did want to believe one thing. I wanted to believe that fatherhood could change him. I wanted to believe that once he saw his daughter, once he held her, something would finally click. I wanted to believe that maybe all the things we had been fighting about would start to matter less. Maybe he would become more responsible, more present, or more invested. I was wrong. He said 10 days, and that was the plan. He was going to return, spend time with our daughter, and begin building a relationship with her. At least that's what he said. But by that point, I should have known something. Almost every major problem in our relationship started with a promise, a plan, an agreement, and then once I did my part, the plan would suddenly change. So after I gave birth, I waited. 10 days came and went. No plane ticket, no visit, no arrival date, no effort to come meet his daughter. Instead, the conversation shifted right back to where it always seemed to go, us moving back to Washington, obedience, and money. At first, I wasn't completely opposed to moving. I had spent months trying to reconcile. I had spent months trying to create a path for my daughter to have a relationship with her father. I wasn't shutting the door completely, but I had just given birth. I was recovering, I was breastfeeding, and I was learning how to be a mother. And we still hadn't done any real work on our relationship. No counseling, no accountability, no rebuilding trust, nothing. The expectation seemed to be that I would simply pack up my newborn baby and move because he said so. And I wasn't comfortable with that. So I tried to come up with a practical solution. I suggested that if moving was truly the goal, we should apply for an apartment and choose a move in date a few months away. That would give me time to recover, time to prepare, time to make sure this was actually the right decision. And to my surprise, he agreed, at least initially. We found an apartment, we submitted an application, we paid the application fees, and we got approved. At the time, I had managed to save a little bit of money. Not a huge amount, but enough to give me some peace of mind. Enough to help with future expenses, enough to help contribute to rent, enough to provide some security for me and my daughter. Looking back, I should have trusted my instincts because I was hesitant to tell him about that money in the first place. By then, I had already learned that whenever money entered the conversation, things usually ended badly. So I only told him about a portion of what I had saved. I explained exactly what it was for: our daughter, our living expenses, just a safety cushion. The second we got approved for that apartment, he told me to transfer the money into his account. He said he would use it to pay the rent and secure everything for us: furniture, the move, everything. And against my better judgment, I did it again. I trusted him again. And almost immediately, the plan changed again. Before we ever signed the lease, he suddenly told me that he had changed his mind. Now, he didn't think we needed an apartment anymore. Now, he thought it would be smarter for me to move into another wife's spare bedroom, a spare bedroom with a newborn. After we had already applied for an apartment, after I had already contributed money, after we had already made plans. And to make matters worse, he kept the money that was supposed to help me, the money that was supposed to help our daughter, gone again. I remember being absolutely furious, not just because of the money, but because of what it represented. This wasn't the first time, it wasn't the second time, it wasn't even the third time. It was a pattern. Every time I trusted him financially, I ended up regretting it. And I remember thinking to myself, never again. Never again would I give this man another dollar, because he had proven over and over again that he could not be trusted with money, ever. What made it even worse was the reality of what he was asking me to move into. I had a room at my parents' house, I had support, I had help with the baby, I had stability, and he wanted me to leave that situation and move into someone else's spare bedroom with the newborn. The room was downstairs, the shower was upstairs, the bathroom would be shared with her children. And somehow I was supposed to believe that this was a better plan than getting our own apartment. Meanwhile, he was continuing to spend money on himself. By that point, he had already taken on another vehicle, another expensive payment, thousands of dollars every month going towards vehicles. Yet somehow there was never enough money for me. Never enough money for our daughter, never enough money for housing, never enough money for stability. And that's when another realization hit me. He had not provided a single thing for our daughter. Not a bassinet, not a blanket, not diapers, not wipes, not clothes. Literally nothing, you guys. Everything my daughter had came from my family, my friends, the baby shower gifts, or my own credit cards. And what makes that even harder to accept is that people from the community had donated money for the birth of our daughter. People believed they were helping support a mother and a newborn. But the reality is, I never saw a dime of that money. None of it went towards me, none of it went towards her. And by the time our daughter was 3 months old, the total amount of money he had ever sent for her was $20. 20. The first money he ever sent was for a prescription in January of 2025. $20. That was it. Meanwhile, I kept asking the same question. When are you coming to see your daughter? Every conversation somehow became about something else. What I wasn't doing, how I wasn't obeying, why I wasn't moving, why I wasn't doing what he wanted. Everything except actually showing up for his child. Then things got even stranger because in November, he came to me with another plan, another financial arrangement, another scheme. This time it was life insurance. He told me he wanted me to get a policy and make him the beneficiary. He explained that his other wives were doing the same thing, that they had policies with him listed as the beneficiaries and he was paying for them, and that I needed to do it too. Immediately, I felt uncomfortable. But at that point, I was still trying to keep the peace, so I listened. I gathered information, I got quotes, I explored options over the next month or so. I even got far enough that paperwork was drafted, but I never signed it. Because unlike before, I wasn't keeping everything to myself anymore. I talked to my mom, and the second I explained the situation, she immediately said, absolutely not. And honestly, I agreed. Because if anyone was going to be the beneficiary of my life insurance policy, it was going to be my daughter, not him, especially not him. The more I thought about it, the more uncomfortable I became. This was a man who had threatened my life, a man who had told me he would pay someone $20,000 to get rid of me, a man who had repeatedly shown that money seemed to be more important than my well being. He had even told me before that he wanted a DNA test on the baby. There was no universe where I felt comfortable making him the beneficiary of a life insurance policy. None. When I started giving pushback, everything changed. Suddenly, he wanted to establish paternity. Suddenly, he wanted to get on the birth certificate. Suddenly, he wanted legal rights. And the timing of that felt very strange because now all of a sudden these conversations seemed connected. The policy, the beneficiary, the legal rights, the control. And I wasn't comfortable with any of it. Not for myself, and definitely not for my daughter. The more time passed, the less I wanted him legally tied to her. I didn't want a custody battle. I didn't want him having some other woman raising my daughter. I didn't want to risk losing my child, and I certainly didn't want to make permanent legal decisions under pressure. Eventually, I told him directly that I was uncomfortable. I explained my concerns, and he snapped. Suddenly, he wanted a separation. Suddenly, reconciliation wasn't important anymore. Suddenly, I was disobedient, and suddenly, everything was my fault. He said he wasn't putting me or our daughter on his life insurance policy. He said that going forward, he would just pay child support and set up some kind of co parenting arrangement. At that point, our daughter was almost 3 months old, and he had still never met her. He was suggesting that I fly a newborn baby to Washington in the middle of the winter during RSV season with no vaccinations. A tiny infant, just so he could see her. I thought it was completely unreasonable, especially because his other baby had already gotten COVID at 2 months old while traveling. I wasn't willing to take that risk, not just for his convenience. And by that point, I was exhausted. Exhausted from the pressure, exhausted from the manipulation, exhausted from constantly being expected to sacrifice while I received nothing in return. So I told him again, send my money back. You took money from me. You aren't providing for us. You aren't helping. You aren't showing up. Send it back. And once again, he refused. At one point, he even called my dad and told him that he simply wanted to pay child support and move on. I'll never forget my dad's response. My dad told him that before he worried about anything else, he needed to come see his child. the child he claimed he wanted a relationship with, the child he had still never met. I agreed completely because by then I wasn't interested in promises anymore. I wasn't interested in plans. I wasn't interested in speeches. I wanted action. Finally, after months of excuses, delays, arguments, pressures, and broken promises, a visit was scheduled. The end of January 2025. My daughter was 3 months old and she was finally going to meet her father. I truly believed that maybe this would be the moment that things started changing. Maybe this would be the moment that he finally stepped into the role he had been promising to step into all along. And I wish I could tell you that everything changed the moment he saw her. I wish I could tell you that holding his daughter softened him. And I wish I could tell you that fatherhood brought clarity, accountability, or responsibility. But that isn't what happened. What happened was something very different.